guys! I'm your Gloomy Princess and welcome to my channel. It has been a bit since I've talked to you and this video is going to be a little different. So, ever since I was like 13 or 12 or something, I'm 22 now, I have been like the biggest Hunger Games stan. I used to go on Etsy and get like fake Hunger Games merch. I had a calendar marked down for when the movies were coming out. I have reread those books up to like 6 times now. I've seen a bunch of different people watching Hunger Games reacting to it recently, and something that they kept on saying that especially after rereading the series really was bothering me was that Peeta's really weak. And I couldn't comprehend this. Then I watched the first movie again. Especially after reading the first book, I just had this big question. How could they take such a calculating and capable character and turn him into such a bitch? In order to look at this in depth, I'm going to be mentioning the other movies a bit, but really we're just going to be looking at the first movie since it's the introduction to the character and it introduces him so dirty. A lot of people say that Peeta's character is terrified frequently. And yes, he is. But in the books, that only lasts until he gets to the train, when he's a 16-year-old boy, and when he's called as tribute, he's like obviously terrified because he has no skills and he knows he's gonna die. So yeah, he's scared. And he does cry in the train, and then after that, he's like fine. He's calculated, he's trying to figure out how to best help Katniss because he knows he can't win. So he's a really good character, a very smart character, and what he may lack in like certain things, he really does make up for in his brains and his manipulation of the Capitol. In the movie, Boy is not ever like unhappy and or sad. In the books, his sadness is always counteracted with the fact that he's not like that after that moment, but in the movie, based on a plethora of scenes in the books you don't get, it just seems like he's always sad. And what I realized about those scenes in the movies that they fucked up too, there are 3 main problems. There are scenes that change who Katniss is, scenes who change who Peeta is, or scenes that stay the same but because of the previous changes just don't work. Does that sound confusing? Maybe, but I'm gonna explain it. For the most part, throughout all of the Hunger Games, Peeta is Peeta. He's like the Peeta from the books. He jokes around, he is vulnerable, he isn't always like the strong man, but that's always been counteracted in the books, with Katniss being the same, Katniss vibing with him, them joking together, so it doesn't seem like he's an outlier or like a little bitch, for lack of a better word. They cut out most of her dialogue in all of their scenes together, so she looks really independent and like tough, and by comparison, Peeta looks so weak and pathetic, it's insane. So the first example of this is on the train. On the train, Peeta and Katniss in the books have really cute moments. They talk a bit, they have small talk, you know, whatever. She doesn't outwardly dislike him or anything. And they even have this really cute moment where they're all eating dinner with Effie, and Effie's talking about how, like, the tributes last season were such barbarians, and you guys are so nice because you guys eat with your utensils. And this rubs Katniss and Peeta the wrong way because, yeah, everyone in their town is, like, starving to death, so of course when they were in front of a bunch of amazing food, they were eating with their hands and, like, rushing. So Peeta and Katniss exchange, like, a cute little look, and then they decide to eat with their hands the rest of the scene to annoy Effie. And it's cute, it shows they're on the same level, it shows that they can joke about this, but it also shows they both have a dislike for the Capitol people. What do they switch this out with in the movies?
Have you ever met him? Haymitch? You know, Katniss, he is our mentor. He did win this thing once.
Katniss completely ignores Peeta as he's talking to her, acts as if she hates him, and honestly, a lot of what I realized when watching this movie is if I didn't read these books, I would think Katniss, like, hates Peeta. And I would maybe even think they're exes by the way she's like ignoring him so much. Okay, the second time they change Katniss's character is during the Chariots. Okay, so in the Chariot ride, they're set ablaze by this fake fire to make like a really good, first impression on the Capitol. And in the books, Katniss and Peeta are like both scared. They're both joking about it. They're like, hey, like, we're not dead by this Chariot ride, or like, I'll extinguish you, man. Like, they're vibing and they're joking. And they're both scared. Katniss in the books goes on for a while about like, I don't know if I'm gonna die by this fake fire. This seems ridiculous, right? In the movies, this scene is changed so that Peeta stays the same.
It's not real fire. These suits are built so you won't feel a thing. Looks pretty real to me.
And instead of Katniss being like, am I right? As she was in the books.
Well, that's the idea. You ready? Don't be afraid.
I'm not afraid.
Now, they don't have a cute little moment together. There is no chemistry. Again, it just changes the dynamic completely. So then it's like, she's being so indifferent towards him that he looks so weak by comparison, because the only information we got out of that scene was that he was like scared. But because Katniss isn't and she's our protagonist, we're like, damn Peeta, you're a bitch. Okay, when they're going to be evaluated. So how the scene plays out in the book. Peeta is going to go first, and Katniss, when he stands up to go, they haven't been talking because she's been trying to ignore him because, she knows she's gonna maybe have to kill him. She doesn't want to talk to him. She doesn't want to be his friend. But as he stands up to go for his training score, she can't help it. She just has to tell him, and she's like, remember to throw stuff. And he in return is like, yeah, shoot straight. Despite her reservations, she cares about him. And that tiny scene, all of these tiny scenes kind of show that, but when they change it, none of them show that. So at this point, they're like friends, but in the movies, you think that they don't even like each other at all, that they hate each other and that she's so indifferent. Because what they do in the movies is that, for whatever reason, she goes first, okay, and she stands up to go, and despite himself, he says shoot straight, and she doesn't reply. She says nothing and she leaves. So, again, it's another scene of Peeta reaching out to her as he normally would, but because it's not reciprocated, he looks weak by comparison. He's like, hey, shoot straight, and she's like, and leaves. So the last one I'm going to talk about really bothers me, and it's, because it just, by changing this in Katniss, it completely changes the fucking scene. And all of these change, right? They're really small changes, but if you had that small bit of information that she had any interest in him, none of it would be as weird and as strange as it is. It's the cave scene when Katniss is talking about, the Katniss singing story. Okay, so in the movie, Peeta declares his real love for Katniss, and he keeps on talking about how when he was little, he noticed her sing in the class, and after that, every day he would watch her walk home, which, I remember when I watched it, even when I was 12, I was like, that really reminds me of Edward being like, I love to watch you sleep. He was like, every day I watched you walk home, which, whatever. The whole time he's saying this though, Katniss is shushing him, and she's like, shh, stop, Peeta, stop talking, don't stop.
You sang in the music assembly, the teacher said, who knows the Valley song in your hand shot straight up. After that,
So it basically feels very like he's declaring his love, but it's unwanted, unromantic, unwarranted. It's just like, dude, I don't like you. But the cave scene is completely different in the books. In the scene, they've been talking for kind of a while, pseudo-flirtily, and then to get a reaction out of the audience, because she knows that's how they're gonna survive, she asks him, so when did you know you liked me? And then he's answering, and the whole time she's like, oh my gosh, shut up, you're kidding. She's so into it. And even in the end of that part, she actually says, despite myself, I can't help but feeling this happy feeling that I realize that's stupid. She actually is into this moment. Even that would have been completely different, just showcasing that she actually is into it, instead of her being like, no, shush, stop. I'm just gonna read it straight up, because it's perfection. She says, you have remarkable memory, I say haughtily. I remember everything about you, says Peeta, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. You're the one who wasn't paying attention. I am now, I say. Well, I don't have much competition here, he says. I want to draw away to close the shutter again, but I know I can't. It's as if I can hear Haymitch whispering in my ear, say it, say it. So I swallow hard and get the words out. you don't have much competition anywhere. And this time it's me who leans in. How different is that? Oh my god! In that, it's like, wow, they're soulmates, they're vibing. And like, even if a lot of it is for camera, there's still this obvious chemistry that they just don't have in the movie. If anything, she's like, dude, shut up. Like, so it just, okay. Now let's go into... So based on Katniss's changes, he already looks weak. And for whatever reason, the few times they change Peeta's character, which isn't often, but every time it does, it just makes him look worse. So for example, the hold hands scene. So when they're in the chariot again, right before, she's basically said like, I'm not afraid. And then they're gonna go on the chariot, drive around so the Capitol can see them. In the books, this is Cinna, their stylist, tells them to hold hands. In the movies, for whatever reason, they decided to give that line to Peeta. So as they're like, so after he said like, tried to joke with her and said like, looks pretty real to me, and she's like, I'm not afraid. Then the next scene is them riding on the chariots and their hands are separate, and then he like grabs her hand and she yanks it away. And it looks like he tried to joke with her, she ignored him, then he's making a move and she doesn't want it. It makes him look weak, and it's basically forcing a romance that like, yes, even though he's being smart in this scene, he's saying like, oh, the Capitol will love it.
Come on, I love it.
It still looks like a really thin veil that's just basically him saying like, I want to hold your hand, and like, I want to feel bad for it. So it's like these little changes they're doing to these characters that just aren't good. The next one is the like, she can hunt scene. So it's the scene where Haymitch is trying to figure out what they both can do. And in the books, this is really cute, and they both defend each other, and Peeta's like, no, my dad eats the squirrel she catches, she always gets them in the eyes, she's so great. And then Katniss is like, yeah, but I've seen him wrestle and throw flour, and he's amazing. And then they have this like cute back and forth. And then Peeta, like, Katniss is trying to deny her talent, and Peeta's like, well, in order for Haymitch to mentor you, he has to know what you're capable of. And it's like reinforcing that he's smart, that he's capable, that he's calculated, he's doing everything for a purpose. In the movies, Peeta, for whatever reason, like, it is true that his mom basically said, like, yeah, Katniss is gonna win, and that's great. But in the movies, Peeta, like, breaks down...
I have no chance of winning. None. Alright? It's true. Everybody knows it.
Like, he says that, but he doesn't say it in a crying way in the book. He's just like, dude, I was never gonna win. Like, hello. But in the books, in the movies, he's so upset that he's like, I was never gonna win. And he almost starts crying, and then he leaves. And he just looks like such a weakling for, like, being so sad and then leaving, instead of, like, this whole back and forth where they're like, no, you're so talented, you're so talented. And then in the end, Katniss is like, well, I'm only alive because you helped me. But by denying even that, it's just weird. It just plays really weird, and it looks really like, I don't know, it just looks like Katniss isn't interested, and Katniss is like, whoa, I'm over here being tough, and you're with your emotions over there, Peeta. The training scene. I cannot express to you how mad this made me, because the little changes do a huge impact, right? Like, one of these changes is fine. Having all of these changes makes Peeta look so weak, especially this scene. Okay, so basically, in the training scene, you know, where they're training before the Hunger Games, nothing happens in the book. They go to a knot tying station, they, like, go to a camouflage station, that's it. They're fine. Nothing happens. In the movies, for whatever reason, Peeta is like climbing a net and he falls and he makes this face and he looks so weak. And then Katniss is like, throw something heavy so everyone won't look at you like such a bitch. And he does, but it's just like, what? And then the only thing they kept out of the books in the training thing is when they go to the camouflage station and he's really good at it and he's like, well, I decorate the cakes. But when you combine it with him being so weak originally, it's just like, it really doesn't help his image. It really doesn't. And the last thing, which is also weird, is when they announce the training scores, Katniss obviously does better than he does. In the books, he's really happy about this because his sole motivation really is knowing that he's gonna die in the Hunger Games, so he wants Katniss to live. So he's really thrilled that she did great, and she's therefore gonna do great. But in the movies, again, he makes this face and is like hurt that she did good, and again, it just reinforces that he's a weak little bitch when he's not. Like, this character is amazing. This character is garbage, and I don't understand it. They kept a few of the scenes the same, but because Peeta now looks like such a weak bitch, and they look like they have no chemistry, none of it makes sense. Peeta's interview, they kept the same, and his strategy is amazing. His strategy is basically to make Katniss look desirable, to make him look desirable, to, like, separate them as the star-crossed lovers of District 12, and that's gonna make them, you know, like, the Capitol eats that shit up, so they're gonna love that aspect to them, and they can play that aspect up, and they'll get a bunch of sponsors from that. But also, he does like her. So when he confesses his love to her in the books, it's calculated, it's smart, but it's also, like, real. In the movies, Katniss has shown literally 0 to no interest in him, maybe said 3 words to Peeta in a total, honestly. And then when he confesses his love, it just looks lame. Like, it looks like, dude, she's really not into you. In the books, Haymitch is like, every time you're training, you guys have to be together. We want to really drive home that you guys are a team. So when he says that, it's not out of nowhere for the Capitol, because they've been seeing them together the whole time. But in the movies, it's like, they hate each other, what? And now we're forcing a romance? It doesn't make sense. The other thing is Foxface's death. So Foxface is like a little smart girl, and she's running around in the arena, and Peeta's picking out these berries, and Foxface eats them, and she dies, and Katniss can't find Peeta. So in both cases, she can't find Peeta, she hears the cannon, she thinks he's dead, she's running around, and she starts screaming and almost crying, and she's like shaking, and she's like, Peeta, where are you? And when she sees him, she's like, don't scare me, you scared me so much. But in the books, it's really impactful because it's like, at this point, she does like him, she does have a crush on him, and she cares about him so much that she really can't fathom the idea of losing him like that. And it just reinforces how much she cares about him. In the movies, there's been like no lead up, like none. It's basically been him bitching and pining about her for like the whole movie. And then this one time, she like cares about him back and is reciprocating, but because there was never any time, it just feels weird and forced. Now, every time I've watched someone react to this movie, they always say, Peeta gets injured a lot. And you know what? Peeta gets injured a lot. But something that Suzanne Collins does really well is she writes people that never get injured in stupid ways. It always makes sense. You know, it's not like, oh no, I tripped and I can't use my leg anymore, ah! Like, it always makes sense. In the books, Peeta gets injured in the first games when he's stabbed by Cato. He's literally stabbed by a sword and gets an infection. And that's not weak. He was stabbed by a sword and got an infection. It's kind of badass, okay? In the second movie, he's like, no one can see a force field. He walks into a force field and gets electrocuted and dies, but then is revived by Finnick, who knows how to do like the Heimlich and whatever. And then he's like weak that whole movie because, you know, that happened to him. And like, that's fair. These are valid things. These aren't things where it's like, dude's so weak, he like fell off a net. Like, these things make sense. What makes the difference is Peeta's attitude outside of being injured. Whereas when Katniss gets injured, it's Katniss, capable, smart, intelligent, independent, like, strong hunter girl being injured. When Peeta gets injured in the movies, it's like, weak little bitch who fell from a net, getting injured again. Like, it reinforces that he's a weak character instead of being like, this is a strong character who's now injured. So Cato's a really example. When he gets injured at the very end and he's like bleeding out and stuff, he's still seen as like Cato. He's still seen as like this strong dude. He's just this strong dude that now is injured. But Peeta doesn't have that effect. So what should be a strong and like capable character being injured ends up being a weakling being injured, and therefore it just loses all impact, and it's kind of sad. When I told my boyfriend I was rereading these books and the movies, I mentioned how much I adore Peeta and Katniss's love story. It truly is my favorite thing. Reading these books is the cutest, most romantic thing to me ever, and I love it so much. And it surprised him because he was like, I felt like Peeta was the one that the Capitol was forcing her to love, but Gale is who she really loved. And that never made any sense to me. But then, for the first time yesterday, I watched The Hunger Games with his lens, and I saw it. How, they never, whereas in the books it's very clear Katniss does not have a crush on him, and she doesn't like Gale like that, and they're friends. In the movies, they never say they're just friends, and then Gale, who's an attractive guy, as soon as they kiss in the arena, her and Peeta, they cut to Gale, so it almost is like you're inferring that they're dating when they aren't. And they don't even ever say they're friends until the second movie. So you wouldn't even know that, and since there's no chemistry with Peeta and Katniss, whereas there's an abundance of it in the book, because there's no chemistry, you just have to assume that she's supposed to be with Gale, and then because their romance, Peeta and Katniss's romance, is so forced, so forced in the movies, you just have to assume she doesn't want to because she wants to be with Gale. And the script flopped really because they made Peeta the same. They made him a nice guy who's smart and capable. But because Katniss is so indifferent towards him and ignores him the whole time, and she's our protagonist, he's being smart to a girl. He's being sweet to a girl who has no interest in him, and that also that just makes him look weak. He looks pathetic for being nice to her. He looks pathetic for wanting her romance when there's never any connection between them. And they did that bread storyline so bad for some reason. They were kids, they were 12 when he threw the loaf of bread. They never explained what actually happened for whatever reason in the first movie. They just keep on cutting to it. And they look like it was yesterday. They look the exact same age, so you wouldn't... And she doesn't look starving. She doesn't. Maybe I could infer that, but she doesn't look starving. I will say what's interesting is that they got a new director after the first movie, thank God. And what I'm noticing about watching Catching Fire right now is that they kept Peeta literally the same as the books, and they kept Katniss, for the most part the dialogue's the exact same, which is amazing, it's why it's so much better. And they kept Peeta and Katniss the same, their dynamic the same, her want for her the same, but because of the first movie, it makes no sense. Hi, Kristen. My dog's being all cute. The whole point of Catching Fire when they go into the second arena is that Peeta tried desperately in the first one in the books, to make her survive, to make her be the victor. That now Katniss is we're probably gonna die in this, and I want us to try to make Peeta survive. And this makes sense in the books when you know this. The whole dynamic in the second movie makes literally no sense, because he's been risking his whole life for her in the first movie, but you don't even know that, so her now saying, this time it has to be Peeta, you're just what? They also make Gale nicer, which is annoying. In the books, Gale is not as nice as he is in the movies. Gale is she tells him that she wants to run away, and as soon as she mentions Peeta, he leaves and gets all huffy and gross and toxic, and he's yeah, well, I don't want anything that's a part of the Capitol, and then he runs off. But in the movies, he's no, yeah, I get it. And it's you didn't though. You changed his character to make him nicer, and then you changed Peeta's character to make him look weaker, so who am I? So that's how the Hunger Games movies ruined Peeta Mellark's character. They changed Katniss's to make her less nice to him, to the point that they have no chemistry. They changed Peeta's character to make him even weaker, to make him look like such a little bitch. And then the scenes that they kept make no sense now. And yeah, this video was a little different for me. I hope you liked it.